I'm sitting in a suite on the 42nd floor of the Meridian Hotel. The city is just a grid of amber lights below me. It's quiet up here. The air conditioning hums like a distant engine, and the coffee on the table is still hot. It's the kind of silence you can't buy with a mortgage. You have to buy it with a severance package. I'm 29 years old, and for the last 1,095 days, 3 years exactly, I was a ghost. I lived in the guest room of my parents' house in a suburb that prides itself on manicured lawns and silent judgments. If you ask the neighbors, they'd tell you the grim tale of the eldest son, Arthur. That's me. They'd say Arthur was a tragedy, a failure to launch, a man who, despite a fancy degree, retreated to his childhood home to hide from the world, while his younger brother, Lucas, conquered it. That was a narrative my father, Franklin, wrote for me. He loved that story. It made him a martyr. It made him the benevolent patriarch, sheltering his broken son. But narratives are funny things. If you change one variable, just one piece of data, the hero becomes a villain and the beggar becomes a king. Let me set the stage before I tell you about the dinner that burned the family tree to the ground. My father, Franklin, owned Sterling & Sons, a boutique restoration company. They fix up old Victorians, restore crown molding, that sort of thing. He is a man who believes that if you aren't sweating, you aren't working. To him, money is something you wrestle out of the earth with callous hands. My brother, Lucas, is 26. Lucas is charming. He has the kind of smile that gets him out of speeding tickets, and into boardrooms he has no business being in. He joined Dad's company right out of college, put on a hard hat for Instagram photos, and called himself a vice president of operations. He bought a house 3 blocks away, married a woman named Rebecca, who comes from old money, and generally played the part of crown prince. And then there was me. I work in algorithmic trading and high-frequency data arbitrage. I don't build houses. I build systems that move capital across borders in microseconds. My office is a laptop and a secure server key. To my father, this wasn't a job. It was playing on the computer. He called it fake work. 3 years ago, I moved back home. To them, it looked like a retreat. They thought I'd lost my job or burned out or gone broke. They never asked, you see. That's the crucial detail. They simply assumed failure because failure fit their view of me. I moved back because I needed a base of operation for a specific volatile contract I was negotiating, and I didn't want a distraction of maintaining my own apartment for a few months. That few months turned into a year, then 2, then 3. Why did I stay? Inertia, maybe, or maybe morbid curiosity. I became an anthropologist in my own home. I watched them. I paid for my own food. I installed my own internet line, so I wouldn't slow down their Netflix. I stayed in my room, room 4B, the guest suite at the end of the hall. I was invisible, but invisibility has a price. When people think you aren't listening or when they think you have no power, they show you their true faces. For 3 years, I listened to them talk about me in the kitchen. Arthur is still sleeping. Mom would say at 7 a.m., not knowing I had been trading the London market since 3 a.m. It's embarrassing, Lucas would say, drinking a beer Dad paid for. I try to set him up with a job at the site, just sweeping up, but he thinks he's too good for manual labor. He's a leech, Dad would grunt. Asterisk, but he's family. We carry the burden. That's what strong men do. I absorbed it all. I let it pile up like sediment. Then came the financial trouble. I saw the mail. I saw the tension in Dad's shoulders. The Sterling & Sons trucks were breaking down. Lucas was taking vacations to Cabo while the suppliers were putting the company on credit hold. I knew they were drowning. And because I am their son, and because I possess a foolish amount of loyalty, I decided to help them. But I knew their pride. If I walked downstairs and wrote a check for $200,000, Franklin would have felt emasculated. He would have hated me for saving him. So I did anonymously. I did it quietly. I thought I was being a guardian angel. It turns out, if you act like a ghost long enough, people start to think they can walk right through you. 2 weeks ago, Thursday night, the family dinner. It's a mandatory performance. We sit at the mahogany table, a table I know they refinished with money they borrowed, and we pretend Uncle Jerry was there. Jerry is Mom's brother. He's been sleeping in the basement den for 18 months because his third wife kicked him out. Jerry doesn't pay rent. Jerry eats the roast beef and complains about the government. But Jerry is a spirited soul who's down on his luck. I sat at the end of the table. I was wearing a hoodie because I had just finished a 70-hour work week closing a deal with a firm in Singapore. Lucas was wearing a tailored suit. Rebecca was checking her watch. We were eating pot roast. The sound of silverware scraping against china was the only noise. Then Franklin cleared his throat. It was a theatrical sound. The sound of a man about to deliver a sermon. "Arthur," he said. I looked up. "Yeah, Dad. We need to discuss your living arrangements." The table went deadly silent. Lucas smirked and took a long sip of wine. He knew this was coming. This was a planned ambush. Dad reached under his placemat and pulled out a document. It wasn't a handwritten note. It was a printed, stapled packet. He slid it across the mahogany. It stopped right next to my water glass. "What is this?" I asked. "Open it," Franklin said. I opened it. It was an invoice, a literal invoice, formatted in Microsoft Excel, with a Sterling & Sons logo at the top. Itema Lodging Guest Suite. 36 months at $800 per month. Subtotal, $28,800. Item 2, utilities and internet surcharge. 36 months at $200 per month. Subtotal, $7,200. Item 3, emotional and domestic labor fee. Flat rate, $5,000. Item 4, late payment penalties, 15% compounded. Grand total due, $47,650. I stared at the number. $47,650. I looked up at my mother. She was studying her carrots, refusing to meet my eyes. "This is a joke, right?" I asked quietly. "It is not a joke," Franklin said, his voice booming. "You've been living off my sweat for 3 years, Arthur. You drift around this house like a phantom, contributing nothing. You think because we're family, you get a free ride? Lucas is out there building a legacy. You are here, hiding." "We're calling the debt," Lucas chimed in. He sounded giddy. "It's time to pay the piper, Artie. Dad and Mom have been too nice for too long. If you can't pay the lump sum," Mom said, her voice trembling slightly, "Dad has drawn up a payment plan. We can garnish your whatever money you make from the computer things. Or," Franklin interrupted, leaning forward, "we take the car. My car. A restored 1967 Mustang Fastback. I kept in the garage under a tarp. It was the one thing they knew I valued. You sell the car," Franklin said, "and we call it even. That's the deal. You have until Monday." Uncle Jerry laughed, a wet, hacking sound. "Tough love, kid. It builds character." I looked around the table. I looked at Lucas, preening in a suit. I looked at Rebecca, who looked bored. I looked at my parents, who looked self-righteous. They honestly believed they were teaching me a lesson. They thought they were waking me up from a coma. They had no idea they were poking a sleeping dragon. I didn't yell. I didn't flip the table. I stood up. I folded the invoice neatly and placed it in my hoodie pocket. "Monday," I said. "Got it." "Where you going?" Franklin demanded. "Sit down. We aren't done." "I am," I said. I walked upstairs. I packed one bag. My laptop, my hard drives, my passport. I walked out the back door to the garage. I uncovered the Mustang. The engine roared to life. A deep, guttural sound that shook the floorboards of the room above me, where my parents were likely congratulating themselves. I backed out of the driveway and drove into the rain. I blocked their numbers before I even hit the highway. For the first week, I did nothing. I checked into the Meridian. I ate room service. I went for long swims in the hotel pool. I let them stew. I knew exactly what they were doing. They were waiting for me to come crawling back. They were expecting me to call, begging for the payment plan, offering the keys to the Mustang. They thought they had all the leverage. But leverage is a function of information, and they were missing the most critical piece of data. Let's rewind to 3 years ago. The guardianship. When I saw the foreclosure notices piling up on the kitchen counter 3 years ago, I didn't just pay them. That would have been messy. The bank, First National, had initiated proceedings against Franklin Sterling. He was 4 months behind on the mortgage. I set up a limited liability company. Let's call it Aegis Holdings, based in Delaware. Completely opaque. Aegis Holdings approached First National and offered to purchase a distressed mortgage note for the full cash value. The bank was happy to get the toxic asset off their books. I bought the mortgage. For 3 years, Franklin Sterling hasn't been paying the bank. He has been mailing checks to a P.O. box in the city. A P.O. box managed by my accountant. Those checks go into an account named Aegis Holdings. My parents didn't refinance with a generous lender, as they told Lucas. They were unknowingly paying rent to their disappointment of son. And here's a kicker. The deed. When I bought the note, there was a clause. If they missed 3 consecutive payments, ownership would transfer fully to Aegis Holdings in lieu of foreclosure. They hadn't missed payments. But the invoice they handed me at dinner? It demanded $47,000 for retroactive rent. If they want to play the game of landlord and tenant, I decided we should play it by the official rules. I called my lawyer, a shark named Davis, on Tuesday morning. Davis, I said, initiate Protocol B. Davis sighed. Are you sure, Arthur? Once we pull this trigger, the gun doesn't unfire. They tried to seize my car, Davis. They invoiced me for emotional labor. Pull the trigger. Wednesday morning. 10 a.m. The courier arrived at the house. This wasn't a regular mailman. This was a process server. He handed the envelope to my mother. Inside was a letter on Aegis Holdings letterhead. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, this letter serves as formal notification that your mortgage note, held by Aegis Holdings, is hereby declared in default due to violation of the good faith clause regarding property occupancy. Furthermore, as a majority equity holder of the property located at 442 Oak Lane, Aegis Holdings is exercising its right to terminate the current month-to-month occupancy arrangement. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. Included in this packet is proof of ownership transfer dated August 2022. Sincerely, the management. I wasn't there to see it, but I can imagine the scene. The confusion. The denial. Who is Aegis Holdings? This must be a scam. Then, they would have called the number at the bottom of the letter. That number goes to Davis's voicemail. Davis called him back an hour later. He recorded the call. I listened to it later with a glass of scotch in my hand. This is Franklin Sterling. My dad shouted, I own this house. I've lived here for 30 years. Who the hell are you? Mr. Sterling, Davis said, his voice like calm water. I represent the owner. You do not own the house. You lost the house to the bank 3 years ago. My client purchased the debt. You've been a tenant. And frankly, my client is tired of the way you treat the property. I want to speak to the owner. Franklin screamed. I'll sue. The owner prefers to remain anonymous, Davis said. But he did leave a message. He said, check the invoice. What invoice? He said you gave him an invoice on Thursday. He's returning the favor. There was a silence on the line, so profound it sounded like the phone had died. Then a whisper. Arthur? Davis hung up. My phone started lighting up like a slot machine. I had them blocked, but voicemail still works. First, Mom, crying. Arthur, please, this is a mistake. Call us. Dad is having chest pains. You can't do this. We're your parents. Then Lucas, angry. You're a psycho. You forged documents. I'm calling the police. You stole the house? You're going to jail, you little freak. Then Uncle Jerry. You ungrateful little punk. After everything this family did for you. I didn't answer. I sat in my hotel room and worked on my algorithms. I made $12,000 that morning on the Japanese yen. On Friday, Lucas found me. I hadn't told him where I was, but Lucas is persistent. He spotted my Mustang in the hotel parking garage. I was in the hotel bar. eating a club sandwich. Lucas stormed in. He looked like he hadn't slept. His suit was rumpled. He walked right up to my table and slammed his hands down, shaking my water glass. "Fix it," he hissed. "Hello, Lucas. Want a fry?" "You stole the house," he said, loud enough that the bartender looked over. "You tricked Dad into signing something." "I didn't trick anyone," I said calmly. "Dad stopped paying the bank. The bank was going to foreclose. I stepped in and paid the debt. I saved the house, Lucas. For 3 years, I let them live there. I let you pretend you were the heir to the kingdom. But the kingdom was already mine. Why didn't you tell us?" Lucas demanded. "Why hide it?" "Because," I leaned forward, "if I told you, Dad would have hated me. He needs to be the provider." I let him keep his dignity. And how did he repay me? By charging me $47,000 for the privilege of breathing his air. Lucas wiped his mouth. "He was just trying to motivate you, Arthur. He thought you were a bum. He wanted you to be a man." "I am a man," I said. "I'm the man who owns the roof over your head." Lucas laughed. A harsh, brittle sound. "Not for long. Dad is talking to lawyers. We're going to fight this eviction. No judge will throw out seniors just because their son is throwing a tantrum. It's not a tantrum, Lucas. It's business. And speaking of business, I pulled a folder out of my briefcase. How is Sterling and Sons doing?" Lucas froze. "We're fine." "Really?" "Because according to the public lien filings, you owe Apex Supply $40,000. You owe the lumber yard $60,000. And you have a credit line with Venture Capital One that is maxed out." Lucas went pale. "How do you know that?" "Because," I smiled, "I bought that debt too." This was the part one hadn't revealed in the letter. 6 months ago, when I saw the business was failing, I started buying up the commercial paper. See, debt is a commodity. When a company like Sterling and Sons starts missing payments, the suppliers get nervous. They want cash. They will sell the debt to a collection agency for pennies on the dollar just to get something back. I was the collection agency. I own 80% of the debt of Sterling and Sons. I could foreclose on the trucks tomorrow, I told Lucas. I could seize the saws, the drills, the warehouse. I could dissolve the LLC by Friday. Lucas sat down. He literally collapsed into the chair opposite me. "You own everything," he whispered. "I invested in my family. I corrected. I tried to shore up the foundation. But you guys kept attacking the structural integrity. What do you want?" Lucas asked. His voice was broken. The golden child was gone. This was just a scared kid in a suit he couldn't afford. "I wanted to eat my pot roast in peace," I said. "That's all I wanted. I wanted to live in the guest room and help you guys from the shadows. But you forced me into the light. Dad will never survive this," Lucas said. "His pride. If he finds out you own the business too, it will kill him." "He's resilient," I said. "He likes hard work, right? Maybe he can work for me." Lucas stared at me with pure horror. "You're a monster." "No, Lucas. The monster is the invoice. The monster is the $47,000 you try to extort from your own brother. I'm just the consequence." The 30-day deadline is today. The house is empty. They moved out 3 days ago. They didn't have a choice. Their lawyer told them the documentation was ironclad. If they fought it, they would lose, and they would owe legal fees they couldn't pay. They are staying in a 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. It's a nice place. Small, but clean. I paid the rent on it for the first 6 months. Anonymous donor. I can't help myself. I still don't want them to be homeless. But the house? The house on Oak Lane? I walked through it yesterday. It was strange. The furniture was gone. The outlines of the picture frames were still visible on the walls. Little ghosts of memories. I walked into the dining room. The mahogany table was gone. That's where it happened. That's where the invoice landed. My phone rang. It was Rebecca, Lucas's wife. "Hello, Arthur," she said. Rebecca? "I just wanted you to know I left him." I paused. "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not," she said. "And neither am I. The stress, the way they acted when they lost a house. It was ugly, Arthur. They blamed everyone but themselves. Lucas was screaming at his mother. Franklin was throwing things. I realized I didn't want to be part of that dynasty. Where are you? I'm at my parents'. I wanted to say, I get it. I didn't get it at dinner. I thought you were being petty. But I get it now. You weren't holding a grudge. You were holding a mirror. That's a poetic way to put it. What are you going to do with the house? She asked. I don't know, I said. Maybe I'll burn it down. Maybe I'll sell it. Maybe I'll turn it into a shelter for wayward sons. She laughed. Goodbye, Arthur. I hung up. I walked upstairs to the guest room. Room 4B. It looked smaller than I remembered. Just a square box with a window looking out at the rain. I stood there for a long time. My dad sent me a text this morning. The first direct contact in weeks. It just said, asterisk, you have one. Are you happy? Asterisk. I thought about how to answer. Am I happy? No. Happiness is warm. This feels cold. But am I free? Yes. I typed back. The invoice is paid in full. Then I blocked him again. I locked the front door of the empty house. I got into my Mustang. I drove back to the city, up to the 42nd floor. I have a meeting tomorrow with a new client. I have a date on Friday with a woman who doesn't know my last name or my history. I have a life to build. A real one this time. The ghost is gone.